It's Rhema Afternoons with Tom and Di.
Great to have you with us as we are joined once again by the Reverend Frank Ritchie. And kia ora, Frank. Look, I'm not surprised to see the topic today because I know when it comes to data, facts, figures, trends, you're very much there. So you've been looking at some census data. Good to have you on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is one that I get asked about almost every time the census comes out since I became a public figure. Everybody wants to know. Well, not everybody, but a whole bunch of people want to know what I think. And of course, almost every census for in my lifetime, but certainly the last few, have showed a decline for Christianity. Hence, people are interested in what I think about it. And this one was no different. We saw a decline in the people who tick any sort of Christian box on the census, down from 36.5% at the 2018 census down to 32.3% in the 2023 census. We saw a slight increase for Hinduism, up to 2.9%, Islam 1.5%. And for the first time, we went over half of the population declaring that they have no religion. I think it was something like 52%, which is significant. So, of course, then people start wondering, do us Christians think the sky is falling in? Is it all doom and gloom? It's worth pointing out that even at 32.3%, Christianity is still the biggest block of any sort of cohesive understanding of the world in New Zealand. It's still the biggest block of identification. Because if we go to no religion, that's a very diverse group. It's a wonderfully interesting group, and I'd love to see more research done on that group because they hold very diverse ideas. So that's a really diverse group. Christianity is diverse, but it's still this kind of same basic idea of how the world operates and what the world looks like. It's still the biggest block.
So you put it out there. Should we be worried? Should we be concerned? Is this something that as Christians we should go, well, gosh, we need to be evangelizing. We need to be getting out there more?
Yeah, I mean, we should always be doing that. We should always be sharing our faith. And I actually think this provides a whole lot of opportunity when it comes to that. But no, I don't think the sky is falling. I remember doing an interview on a show called The Project on TV3 back in, I think it was 2019, about the census. And at almost every turn, I sounded relatively positive. And I remember Jeremy Corbett, the comedian, getting to the point where he's like, it's hard for you to be negative about anything, is it? And in relation to this, that's true. One of my great interests in life is history, and particularly religious, and then more specifically Christian history, going back for the last 2,000 years, and particularly in the West. And I think when you have that big, long perspective, and you understand the best and the worst of Christianity, when you understand the state of Christianity in the world at the moment, all around the world, it gives you a whole lot of perspective about the times when the faith has done well and the times when the faith hasn't done well. And I can say with almost certain confidence that Christianity has always been at its best when it's a minority voice. We are not at that place in New Zealand at the moment, but it is where we are heading. And if that's when Christianity is at its best, and it's at its worst when it has a whole lot of power, then I'm looking forward to whatever comes.
Well, 2025 is coming very quickly, Frank. And I guess the reality, maybe the perspective of those who call themselves Christians living in this world do have genuine concerns about what they see, along with everybody else in terms of global headlines, also national headlines and the world in which they live in, but also perceivably wrestling with how the world sees Christianity in 2024, 2025. So, how do we face the year ahead? When we look at statistics like this and kind of go, well, are less and less people, staying committed to following Jesus?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think it's really good to analyze the data and work out what's really going on here. From my understanding, and I hoped to dive into some other statistics before we went to air, but I was really busy. But my understanding is that the number of people who actually go to church, who are committed to living out their faith and being part of a community in a regular way, has remained relatively stable for a very long time. What we're seeing a decline of is the people who culturally identify as Christian. So let's say you grew up and your parents baptized you as an Anglican when you're a baby, or Catholic. And then so you grow up self-identifying as Anglican or Catholic or Methodist or Presbyterian for that reason. What we're seeing is the decline of people who just believe themselves to be Christian, even if it's not a deep intrinsic part of who they are and how they live, which means that what we're starting to face as Christians, I think, is a real opportunity. The statistics and the research shows that the younger generations, Gen Zs, Gen Alpha, are much more open to discussions about spirituality and about faith and about Jesus and about church life, because they don't have that cultural memory or that thought that they know the story. Whereas the generations like mine, Gen X, boomers before me, and even millennials, there's the sense that we know the story to a degree, or that we got forced into things, forced to go to Sunday school when we were a kid, forced to take religious education and Bible in schools. And that memory is fading, which then creates an opportunity. But if we look around the world, we are in no way in a really bad place when it comes to the faith here in New Zealand. There might be some things that go on that we disagree with, but I can look to brothers and sisters in countries that genuinely are persecuted, where it is in a very real way dangerous to hold to a Christian faith. That's not the case here.
Before we finish off, Frank, something that I picked up on before is you were talking about when, the faith is faced with perhaps what we are going to be faced with, perhaps not now, but in the future, we become our very best. Can you sum up what that is? What is the very best of the Christian life, of Christian living, of Christian community? What does that look like? Because if we're not there now, what could that look like? What has it looked like in the past? Just taking a look at trends in history.
Yeah, I think to be most blunt, it's when we are faced with the cross. When we follow the one who made himself powerless, who emptied himself of all power and went to the cross, and somehow, paradoxically, life, resurrection, rebirth, newness, and flourishing came through first, being faced with death, and Jesus walking through death and defeating death. When Christianity has been in that space and it's been at the margins, and it's served the poor, for instance, and it's made its home among the poor, when it hasn't been in the hallways of power, that's when it's really spread. When we've gained power and we've had wealth, we work really hard to protect our institutions, to protect that powerful place that we have. And so we start to rage then when some of that power starts to be taken away. When that's removed from us and we're made to be and look a little more like Jesus, that's when we do well.
Humility. Well, there's a lot to unpack as we think about this, Frank. Appreciate your thoughts again on the show, the Reverend Frank Ritchie, as we look at, some of the statistics from the recent census in regards to faith here in New Zealand. Look forward to catching up again.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Rhema. Now, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to our channel with the subscribe button. This really helps us to continue to produce more quality content for you. And hey, if you'd like to stay updated and never miss any of our future videos, ring that notification bell as well. Don't forget to follow us on our other socials, which are in the description below. And until then, stay tuned.